Welcome to a virtual conversation on philanthropy. My name is David Holmes. For the year that I've been here, I have thoroughly enjoyed Tennessee's version of Pay It Forward. I have often gone to Taco Bell and noticed that as I came up to pay my bill, it was already paid for. Now, that's a very small example of what we mean by philanthropy. In fact, philanthropy comes from two very important Greek words. First of all, phileo, or Philadelphia, not just brotherly love, but friendly love. And of course, the notion of anthropos is about humankind. So when we talk about this notion of philanthropy, we're talking about well-being and love towards humankind, human beings that you don't even know yet. And that excites me when I think about the notion of philanthropy, because in a real sense, it is reminiscent of what the great Martin Luther King Jr. said about community. He says the ultimate goal that we should seek is the goal of beloved community. And that will be the day not of whites or blacks, but it would be the day for people. Thank you for all that you are doing with philanthropy. And we want to particularly thank our sponsor, Cigna Health. And we're now going to have a video played for us by Cigna Health.
People say making a healthier workforce will take a moonshot. One company says, challenge accepted. Cigna, with digital programs providing access to affordable, flexible care, using predictive analytics to engage employees in their health, and making connections across care to help get your workforce healthier faster. Cigna is again leading the way. So the future of healthcare may be a moonshot, but it isn't a long shot.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Lowry, Senior Vice President for Advancement here at Lipscomb University. We're thrilled to have you join us tonight for this installment of the LipscombLEADS Virtual Conversation Series. Thank you, Cigna, for sponsoring this evening. This series is part of a whole profile of campaign activities that have had to change this year in the world of COVID-19. And yet we're still excited to bring thought leadership to our donors and our alums and our communities as we think about very, very important topics that not only affect Lipscomb University, but also affect our community as well. Tonight, we're thinking about philanthropy. And as we think about philanthropy, many of you have been part of the LipscombLEADS campaign. And I want to take just a minute to show you a video that'll just give you an update in terms of where we are in this historic campaign for Lipscomb University.
Greetings from Lipscomb University. I'd like to take a few minutes and update you on our historic LipscombLEADS campaign, the largest fundraising initiative in the university's 129-year history. When we launched the public phase of LipscombLEADS, January of 2019, after a long and successful quiet phase, I announced an ambitious goal to reach $250 million raised by the end of 2021. And we are well on our way with more than $242 million committed to date. We have been overwhelmed to have the support of nearly 47,000 donors who invested in Lipscomb through this campaign. $38 million in gifts to scholarships are making the dream of a Lipscomb education possible for our students, including $1.5 million in gifts to the Lipscomb Opportunity Fund that helped us secure a record enrollment this year, a record enrollment even in the midst of COVID-19. Some of our other prominent campaign priorities include a number of capital projects to enhance existing buildings and construct new facilities to better serve our students and meet the needs of a growing student population. The George Shinn Center provides studio and classroom space for students in the George Shinn College of Entertainment and the Arts, a new welcome center for prospective students and their families, and an event hall, a first-class event hall for a variety of campus and community events. Later this year, we will complete the purchase of our beautiful villa up on a hilltop in Florence, Italy, Lipscomb's first fully owned international campus. We have also enhanced our residential life facilities with the construction of Bison Hall, featuring upscale hotel-style rooms for upperclassmen and a floor-to-ceiling renovation of the historic Elam Hall. Fields Engineering Center and McFarland Science Center provide more than 50,000 square feet of cutting-edge laboratories and teaching space for students studying in the STEM disciplines at Lipscomb. We also have new and improved athletic facilities, including a greatly enhanced university soccer complex. As we look toward the final phase of LipscombLEADS, our top priority remains student scholarships. Your generous support will enable Lipscomb to compete for the best and the brightest students in the country and will allow us to make the dream of getting a Christian education possible for all students, regardless of their socioeconomic background. Other projects that we hope to fund as part of this campaign, they include a new performing arts center, the transformation of the McQuitty Gym into a modern practice and training facility for our student athletes, and a new chapel, a chapel to create a sacred space for spiritual growth and renewal on our campus. It's an exciting time to be part of the Lipscomb community. We hope you will partner with us prayerfully and financially in providing academic excellence in a Christ-centered environment. We think this mission is more important now than ever. To the many donors who have already given, let me offer my sincere gratitude. I want to specifically thank those who have continued to give despite the uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic. Your investment allows us to serve more students with greater care, and it will transform and shape lives for future generations. It is because of you that Lipscomb leads. I look forward to continuing work together as we fulfill our vision to make Lipscomb a premier Christian university in the nation. Thank you for your support. God bless you, and go Bisons.
Tonight, we have the distinct privilege of welcoming Sue Cunningham, the president and CEO of the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education, known as CASE. CASE is a world leader in supporting institutions like Lipscomb in 80 or so countries across the world. And Sue provides the vision and the leadership that allows these institutions to raise money and to find support so that they can continue to advance their missions. Sue, we're honored that you're joining us at Lipscomb tonight in a virtual way. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for taking some time out of your evening to have a conversation about philanthropy across the globe.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. And I'd just like to take a moment to congratulate you on the LipscombLEADS campaign. It's inspiring and a huge tribute to you and your community and President Lowry's leadership. Huge congratulations. Very exciting.
Thank you very much, Sue. Tell us a little bit about CASE. For folks that may not be as familiar with it, talk a little bit about what CASE does and how it impacts both institutions as well as philanthropists across the world.
Sure, I'd be really happy to. And in fact, the last time I was in Nashville was in 2017, and that was all about CASE. And I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. But as you've kindly said in your introduction, CASE is a membership association. Our members are schools, colleges, and universities around the world. We have about 3,500 members, and the members are institutions, and working inside them are about 92,000 people on our rosters who get up every day like you do, John, because they're so passionate about advancing education to transform lives in society. And so the advancement professionals who work in those institutions are people involved in fundraising and alumni relations, in marketing and communications, advancement services, and they all have huge impact. And one of the things that is most exciting about CASE and the programs that we run, the research that we do, the data that we provide, and I'll say a bit more about that later, are the people. And CASE is incredibly fortunate in having about 4,000 people every year who volunteer for us in different ways. And Nashville is in the midst of our District 3 region, which I have to say, District 3 is a region which is full of amazing CASE volunteers. And Rhonda Minton, who's your Director of Strategic Communications and Advancement, is in fact one of the fabulous District 3 cabinet members. But the last time I was there was for the District 3 Nashville conference in 2017, which was fabulous. And just next week, thinking about innovation in our current era, all 8 districts across the US and Canada have come together to do one conference, an all districts conference, Better Together. And we have over 14,000 people registered for that conference. So an illustration of the power and the passion behind this important work.
Well, Rhonda is an incredible volunteer for you and an incredible employee here at Lipscomb, and we value the opportunity to partner with CASE on all sorts of different kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey that led you to leading this very impactful organization.
Well, thank you, John. I just feel incredibly fortunate. And you and I were just exchanging notes about both being university brats. So as my accent demonstrates, obviously I was born in Oakland, California, and moved to London when I was 9 years old. My father was a university professor, and we moved back from UC Berkeley to London. And I found myself after college, and it's great to hear about your Performing Arts Center. I studied performance arts at college, at Performing Arts. And then I discovered, after working in theatre for a few years in stage management, this world of advancement. And I started in that world working in the arts and culture, working for a photographic gallery and then for some museums in the UK. And then I went up to my first university role at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. And after that, I was fortunate to move to Oxford to be Director of Development for one of the colleges and then for the university. And when I was at the university, we launched the campaign, the Oxford Thinking Campaign, to raise £1.25 billion. And after getting just beyond the £1 billion mark, I was really fortunate, teaching on a CASE program actually in Australia, to be approached about a vice president position at the University of Melbourne in Australia. So I went to Australia for a few years, launched a campaign to raise 500 million Australian dollars. And after about 400 million, when I was loving my time there, someone said, you know, this presidency of CASE is coming up, and would you consider it? And I said, I would love it, but I don't think I would have the chance of getting it. And they said, well, we think you should throw your hat in the ring. And CASE is an organization that I'd volunteered with, like Rhonda and many others, for about 18 years. And so having the opportunity to lead an organization that I care so deeply about, that is all about advancing education to transform lives and society, it doesn't get much better. So, and I'm just approaching the end of my 5th year, about going to my 6th year in this role.
Wow, congratulations. Well, truly a global perspective. And as we think about the world right now, you probably share the same feeling that I do, where I long for the day where we don't have to talk about COVID. But we're not yet there. We're still in a world that is deeply impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of trends resulting from COVID-19 as it relates to educational philanthropy.
Well, if I could just point out, John, that your timing is exquisite, because today was the day that CASE launched the Voluntary Supportive Education Findings, which is a survey that goes back decades, that surveys around 1,000 institutions in the US and Canada. So today is the very day those results have come out. So your question is perfect on this day. So before I talk about a few data points, I'd just like to reflect on, I think, what we've all seen over the last, coming up a year, isn't it? Which is this profound sense of communities pulling together. And I get a profound sense in talking to you in anticipation of today and in reading and learning about your campaign, that the Lipscomb community has been a powerful good, not just over the last year, of course, but over the last year, I think there's been a particular sense of coming together about what people care about most, and returning to mission and purpose. And clearly education, I think, I'm sure for every single person who's on this call is something that is undoubtedly really important. So understanding the incredible difference that those who engage in education can have through their philanthropy. And again, listening to your president a few moments ago, the impact that's been seen at Lipscomb is really powerful. We've seen, and again, your focus on supporting students, we've seen a real focus on thinking about how to support institutions at this time. in supporting students, and of course, where relevant, supporting research in different areas, but particularly around healthcare and so on. So a few points from the survey findings themselves. I mean, one is that we've seen over the last 60 years of the survey that there is a close alignment between the stock market and between philanthropy. And of course, what's happened to the stock market in the last year has been all over the place. So I think that's informed these results in part. But that said, giving for the past 2020 fiscal year remained steady to the previous year. It only edged down slightly from 49.6 billion across the US and Canada to 49.5 billion. So that's really tiny. And again, if we think back to last March and April, where there was a sense of, do we keep going? What's this going to be like? And to see that incredible rebound, and again, the incredible generosity that we've seen, I think is really powerful. Again, if we look compared to last year, we've seen gifts to current operations grow significantly. So they rose about 7%. And gifts to capital purposes declined about 10%. So that's interesting. And I think potentially around that sense of urgency and needing to deal with the situation as it is, that giving to current operations is really interesting. Didn't see a huge swing in the purpose of gifts. So gifts for endowment for student aids, for example, is the largest category of restricted gifts or current use. And that category is research and academic divisions. So those are some top line results, and there's much more to be explored through the Voluntary Support of Higher Education survey that CASE does each year. But I think all things considered, it's incredibly heartening to see the response over the last 12 months and the powerful coming together of community to contribute to what they know is a vital good for today and for tomorrow and the long-term future.
Let me follow up with a question that was actually submitted by one of my colleagues who was just noting the fact that obviously, COVID-19 has created a lot of challenges, but as you noted in some of the data, there's also been some opportunities and there's been some pleasant surprises that have come from COVID-19. As you look at the data and you look at it from a global perspective, what opportunities do you see on the horizon in terms of schools like Lipscomb being able to connect with donors to raise additional support, especially as we move into kind of a post-pandemic yet very changed world?
Well, it is a great question, John. And I think what we're seeing is, you know, the number of conversations I've had with members around the relative ease of connection. So if one thinks back to the pre-COVID world, if one was seeking to gather a group of alumni or have a meeting with key stakeholders or connect with donors in a different part of the country or a different part of the world. Of course, those things always take planning, but they also took time to set up and to know that people were going to be where they were going to be. And whereas now the potential of bringing together a president or a dean with a donor, with a key alumnus, these things are happening in a much more nimble way. And that is incredibly powerful. And it will be interesting to see as we transition to a different place, the extent to which the virtual is retained and the extent to which, you know, ultimately we are, I think human beings are social creatures. And therefore, but I think, I mean, speaking for myself, in the previous life, I was probably traveling about 45-50% of the time.
Sure.
I'm not sure whether my husband is enjoying seeing as much of me as he is now. I certainly am, but joking apart, I think thinking about how most effectively can we use this virtual means of connecting, as we've seen institutions do over the last year, and where are the times that being in person is going to be really important. And that's going to be, I think, a really interesting journey. I think we've had an opportunity to learn a lot over the last year about the potential for connectivity through the virtual and where it is brilliant and where maybe it's not optimal.
Yeah, it is kind of fascinating how, as we all had to isolate and physically distance, as the technology came in and as people embraced that technology, in some ways it actually brought us closer together in terms of the ability to reach out and connect and to, in many cases, overcome some of the geographic barriers that exist in terms of just being together. We've certainly seen that with our donors. And I want to think a little bit about donors for just a second, because I know that you keep your ear very close to the ground in terms of philanthropy and the thinking of philanthropists. And we are very fortunate tonight to have many of Lipscomb's donors on this Zoom call. So let's think a little bit about just philanthropists. How do you see them responding to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I think magnificently. In a word, I just think that in my experience, in the work in which we're very fortunate to be involved in, where philanthropy is, as is illustrated by your campaign, is most successful, is where there's a powerful relationship between those who are working in the institution and those who are working with the institution to bring about things that are really mission critical and that are really important. And as I said a few moments ago, I think that sense of really returning to what is most important has been really a key theme over the last 12 months. And so seeing donors both respond to immediate need and also continue really important conversations about supporting activities, opportunities, campaign priorities that have been long in the making. And I think what's really interesting is to see the nimbleness and the flexibility and the dedication. And the reality is that for the vast majority of us, there is probably less certainty around what next month is going to look like, or maybe what tomorrow is going to look like than there was. I'm sure you have those moments like I do when you're watching a movie and you suddenly see people in a room crowded with people and you think, gosh, is that all right? And then you think, no, that was then and that. But we sort of took all those things for granted. And I think that sense of, so all of us are having this sort of outside our doors, as it were. We're existing in an environment which has its challenges, and to see how people have responded with such heart and such generosity and such passion and care is powerful. And of course, that some of the gifts nationally and internationally that grab the headlines are the really sort of large ones in terms of numbers. So, and an area that's been, of course, of high profile, rightfully so, in recent months has been that around social justice and racial equity. And we've seen just in recent weeks the incredible philanthropy of Mackenzie Scott and her investment in HBCUs, amongst others. Those are the big headlines, and those are really important. And so is every gift at every level that is having impact and changing lives. So I think it's about celebrating the many and recognizing the incredible vision and generosity of every single person who chooses to be philanthropic in different ways.
So you and your colleagues at CASU spend a lot of time providing just wonderful coaching and wonderful advice to people that are sitting in chairs that are similar to the chair that I sit in and trying to raise money. Change roles for just a minute for me and provide some counsel to donors who are wanting to maximize the impact of their gifts and wanting to give in such a way that it can make a real difference despite all of the uncertainty that exists out there. What advice would you have for donors in terms of how to make the biggest impact possible with the resources that are available to them?
I think it's a really, really great question. And I have the privilege, as do you, of meeting some incredible people who are philanthropically inclined and make such a difference. And I think ultimately this all comes down to relationship. And as we know, relationships, and we are all building relationships in our lives from when we are very small. And the best relationships are ones where there are, each side is putting in equal sort of effort and commitment and dedication to it. So I think in terms of, I'm really heartened and impressed to see the extent to which people who are giving to schools and colleges and universities are giving of their resources and also giving of their mind and their heart. And so really taking the time to get to know the institution, getting to know the opportunity, not being afraid to ask questions about how the investment will be utilized, what impact it will have, Where these things are most transformational is where there's the alignment of you, the donor's vision, with the institution's vision. And you only discover those things by connecting and talking to each other. And I think, again, I've seen donors have, incredible power in supporting an institution, really be aspirational about what it's seeking to do. And your campaign is an illustration of that. I mean, I think it's the people within the institution develop vision, and donors come and affirm it and help nurture it and develop it further. And I think that's what's so inspirational about the work that we do.
So do you have an example for us in terms of a partnership that has come together in a really powerful way that made a difference, especially in the uncertain times of COVID? Is there an example you can point us to that says that really is a great picture of what it looks like when a philanthropist and a higher education institution come together, like you said, to partner to make a difference in a city or a community or in the lives of students?
Well, thank you. And of course, there are myriad examples. I mentioned her earlier, but the reason I wanted to reflect on this, and there was an article about this, I think the day before yesterday, but just thinking about your question and thinking about community impact. So I mentioned Mackenzie Scott a few moments ago and her giving to HBCUs. One of her acts of generosity recently was to Delaware State University. And that was she was adding to a gift that had already been provided by a local organization, the Longwood Foundation, that invests in Delaware nonprofits. But those gifts are facilitating an effort for Delaware State to acquire a private college, Wesley College, that was actually struggling, but is incredibly important to the community of Dover in which it exists. So through that philanthropy, not only is it investing in the important work that Delaware State University does, but it's ensuring that a college at the heart of a community of Dover will be able to be sustained and flourished. And I think that's powerful and exciting and happening, very much now. I think another thing that I've seen philanthropists do, which I think is really innovative and exciting, is where they encourage at times for institutions to work together in different ways. So for example, the Atlantic Philanthropies, when I was at the University of Melbourne, was working with institutions around the world, and the University of Melbourne was fortunate to be one of them, but was really thinking about bringing vision and excellence together from different places, from different institutions, to achieve things that were bigger than any one institution. And that sort of philanthropy, I think, is really, really interesting and really creative. So, but those are just a couple of illustrations, and there are just so many of seeing people having done incredibly impressive things, and foundations and corporations as well, of course.
Those illustrations give us a little bit of a snapshot in terms of what's happening in higher education. And the reality is that even before COVID-19, there was a tremendous amount of change as institutions were dealing with the onset of technology, which I want to talk more about later. As some institutions were dealing with the fact that their financial model probably wouldn't be sustainable in the long term. And so as we begin to look to the future and we begin to see that we're going to be in a higher education landscape that looks very, very different than it did prior to the pandemic, talk a little bit about how education and specifically educational philanthropy will look different and be different as we enter into this kind of post-pandemic world?
Well, that's just a really easy question, John, and I have all the answers. I will just, I've got my crystal ball just over here.
That foreseeability piece for you. Yeah. What do you see out there?
I think that what I believe and know in my heart, as I'm sure you do, that philanthropy, and as was so eloquently put by Dr. Holmes at the very beginning of this love of mankind. I don't think whatever pivot points, whatever crises, whatever inflection points we hit, I don't think that love of humankind is going anywhere. I think that, so thinking about philanthropy in the future, I think my sense is that the relationships will remain at the core. I think we may be seeing a world where we're experiencing more and more hybrid education and more opportunity to extend the excellence of institutions such as your own more broadly through the virtual to some who may not be able to study in our campuses. And so then one starts to think about, so how is one building those relationships and strengthening those connections in that kind of environment? I also think there's opportunity as one thinks about imagining the future and creating the future for partnerships with other key stakeholders, with corporations, with organizations. And there's been things written about this that I've read quite recently, who are also will be interested in helping to build accessibility to education. So I think there's, and again, as we were talking about a little earlier, my knowledge of sports is pretty limited, but there's one metaphor that is very sewn into my heart, and it's particularly relevant right now, which is about knowing where the puck is going to be.
Yeah.
And I think philanthropists working with colleges and universities have a key role to play in doing that creative imagination and thinking about scenarios and then determining how we're going to work together to achieve them.
Let's think about the accessibility question for just a second, which really comes down to affordability at the end of the day. And we've seen the statistics, and many people are familiar with them in terms of the cost of higher education and how it continues to escalate. Lipscomb has many donors that are very, very concerned about the affordability of higher education and the affordability of Lipscomb as well. And this is actually a question that comes from one of those donors who expressed concern over that and asks, what can be done to reduce the rampant increase in the cost of higher education that is leading to higher and higher levels of student debt? How can philanthropists and higher education institutions partner together to try to get students out of college in such a way that they don't have this big burden of debt that goes with them as they launch their careers?
Well, that's an incredibly thoughtful question, and I think a really important question. And as your president said in your video at the beginning of our conversation, that investing in student support is really important as part of your campaign. So I think philanthropy has a key role to play in thinking about how we can enable people, first of all, to choose to study at Lipscomb and other universities and not be fearful of the barrier of the financial responsibility that comes with it. And also to create a dynamic where whilst people are studying, they are not overwhelmed by the need to work many hours in a paid job in order to be able to continue to study. So how we get that balance right, I think, is a critically important one. And there's no question at all that we've seen over recent decades an inflation of the cost of studying at higher education. And at the same time, we've seen incredible philanthropy around student aid. And again, a headline grabbing story, but one that was utterly inspiring in this space was Michael Bloomberg's gift to Johns Hopkins University a year or so ago of over 1.8 billion to support undergraduate financial aid. And, when one thinks that his very first gift when he was just graduating was $5, I think there are people who are and can and do make a significant impact in this space. And of course, those who are currently students and in receipt of that financial aid will be the donors of the future. So I think it's something we all need to be thoughtful about. And again, I think this is where, as I said a moment ago, I think the virtual that we've learned so much about over the last 12 months provides a greater opportunity to think about how can we offer more and more affordably in the future.
One of the things that you wish you could put it together, but it's very, very difficult at times in terms of helping people understand the difference that even a small gift can make in the life of a student, trying to figure out how to make college workable financially. And one of the great privileges is having the opportunity to, even with a very small gift, use that gift in such a way that it absolutely changes somebody's life. And in some cases, it not only changes their life, but it changes the life of those in their family around them as they are launched into a different career and a different opportunity to earn a living that can be transformative in their lives. And as I think about those moments, we talk about a lot of money, but at the end of the day, that money often gets invested in people or gets invested in the process of learning in a way that helps and changes people. Talk a little bit about the impact that you see from your perspective in terms of how it is that people are effectively partnering with higher education institutions to really make a difference in the lives of people and to carry out what Dr. Holmes was talking about in terms of that love and have it expressed through a financial contribution.
And I'm glad you've talked about it the way you have, John, because I think one of the challenges, and certainly when I was in your shoes working as a VP in advancement, one of the frustrations at times in terms of the coverage of what the amazing things that one's achieving is that the focus is entirely on the numbers as opposed to the impact. And as you're describing, every single act of philanthropy, when it is impacting upon a student's life, when it's impacting upon the ability to provide the facilities, the teaching, the learning, the libraries, the sports, all of the above, every single gift makes a huge difference. And donors who are investing, and this is again where the bringing together of what people care deeply about with what's core to an institution's mission just achieves transformational things at every single level. And again, that sense, the number of conversations, as I'm sure you've had, with those who have been receiving in scholarship support when they were students and are now thinking about giving back, hearing people talk about the huge difference that made to their lives. Mm-hmm. And as you say, the size of the investment was not nearly, ultimately, it wasn't the heart of the matter. I haven't heard people talk to me about, X years later, I got a scholarship for X amount of dollars or Y amount of dollars. What they talk about is the fact that someone or someone's cared deeply enough to invest in my future. And that was an inflection point in my life. And it's really, I'm kind of feeling myself welling up because it's just so powerfully moving and so critically important. And the story of philanthropy to education in this country is inspiring, and it's inspiring from every other part of the world.
So let me ask you a bit of a tactical question, but it's one that's really, really important as we think about continuing a commitment to students and wanting to continue to provide opportunities for them as an expression of love for them, to recognize that higher education is moving at even a more faster pace as a result of COVID-19 into a more technology-based environment. And we see that happening kind of across the United States for sure, in terms of just the additional online programs that are out there. Talk a little bit about what you envision in terms of philanthropists and universities, how they can partner together strategically to be able to have the same impact in people's lives, even though they may never step foot on campus, even though their only engagement may be through a technological platform like we're sharing here tonight. Talk a little bit about how you see philanthropy following that change.
And I think, as we touched on earlier, I think it's a huge opportunity. There have been some institutions in different parts of the world that have only offered online learning and distance learning forever, and may have brought people back onto a campus for a week during their whole time, or not at all. And the relationships in those contexts where something that I've heard over the course of this year is that the virtual is a very fine vehicle for continuing to build relationships that already exist. But initiating relationships that haven't been there before, I think it's different, and I think it's harder. And at the same time, even before COVID, I was hearing about the fewer and fewer students who were choosing to sit in huge lecture theatres when lectures were recorded, because actually what they preferred to do was be able to be sitting in their own dorm and play it and replay it and replay it and watch specific sections. So I think thinking about where technology is leading us and the extent to which education is hybrid and what we're developing and what we're delivering, I think it offers the opportunity of philanthropists working with institutions, working with technology providers to rethink what the optimal models are for delivery. And if we wind back the clock 50 years, 30 years, these technology solutions didn't exist, 5 years. So now there's really the opportunity moving forwards, and technology always takes investment. Inevitably, it takes investment. But having that philanthropic engagement vision to align with the technology, to align with the institutional knowledge and expertise, and think about how one establishes that mix, I think it's going to be a really interesting journey. And I think different institutions will have different approaches, and that will be part of the learning for all of us.
One of the other changes that we're seeing is as we think about funders and folks that are giving, we're seeing corporations that are perhaps behaving a little bit differently than they have in the past in terms of becoming a bit more active and bringing about some societal change and making investments that are very strategic and very targeted. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing there in terms of corporate philanthropy and how higher education institutions like Lipscomb can position themselves to be able to partner with corporations to bring about good, positive change in communities.
Sure. And if I look back at the data from the Voluntary Supportive Education Survey that we published today, just over 13% of the total giving came from corporations. So that's a significant proportion. That's over $6.63 billion in this country. So I think it's an area that, as I know you do, that we need to be really focused on and thoughtful about. And again, I think the corporate relations, if I think about something really close to home, CASE has offices in different parts of the world, and one of them is in Latin America, in Mexico City. Before COVID, we were in conversations with an educational partner there, Santander Bank, about creating a survey on fundraising for Latin America, in the same way that we have the Voluntary Supportive Education Survey here in the US and Canada, and a survey in Europe and in Australia as well. So we were developing this survey instrument, and then COVID hit, and we were talking to Santander, and they said, actually, what we think is much more urgent is the universities here need more support, more hands-on support in building their advancement activity, because advancement is so critical to the future of education. And they said, so we still want to pursue this survey, but right now we prefer to work with you on creating an online 101 fundraising program. We'll provide scholarships. Let's build this together. And that's exactly what's happened. And we thought if we got 50 or 60 people on the first program, that would be pretty amazing. We're over 85 or 90. And this has come through a real partnership of focusing on what, in that context, the need is in Latin America and predominantly Mexico, and how CASE can be most supportive in that context. So thinking about where there are, again, it's where the goals of both institutions are coming together to achieve something for the public good. And I see that happening more and more in the context of the corporate sector, thinking more and more about social responsibility and impact. And of course, universities are incredibly good partners in that regard.
Yeah, that whole essence of shared vision can be very, very powerful, especially when you think about what a higher education institution can bring, which is a whole army of talented young people that have the desire to go out and serve. And then a corporation, which has resources, oftentimes has connectivity, has the ability to influence, and putting those together, that can be a very, very powerful thing. We're about out of time, Sue. So let me ask you one last question. I can't believe the night has flown by so quickly, but one of the essences of the work that we do that we've certainly touched on tonight is the whole idea of relationship. and how so much of this is grounded in relationship between the people at an institution and the people that claim an institution and support an institution. Give us some ideas in terms of how we can strengthen those relationships, especially in light of what's going on in COVID-19. But as we begin to even think about how to mature those relationships even further, how do we get creative in terms of finding ways to partner more closely and more creatively together?
I think the heart of it is communication. And I think communication, is, at the very beginning of this COVID journey, there was almost a sort of holding back of, can we continue to be communicating with our alumni, with our donors, with our supporters at this time? Do we need to this is a strange time for all of us. And the reality is, what's become increasingly clear this year is that outreach, that communication, that connection, that collaboration, I think is critically important. And as we know, the more that there's an exchange of ideas, of vision, of passion, and the more there is a sort of an open and transparent exchange about where we're going and what we need from each other, that's where remarkable things happen and magical things happen. And I was just thinking, in the context of our last question, early last year, I was up in Washington State at the University of Washington, where we were having a forum about the impact that had happened when major corporations locally had come together with the alumni of institutions across the state from many institutions, together with the higher education sector, to work with government to introduce a new business tax to provide support for financial aid for students. And it came to be. And so again, that power of corporations, of alumni, of philanthropists, of educational institutions, of local government coming together to achieve great things for the future of education, really, really inspiring. And I'm incredibly grateful for the leadership that Lipscomb University is bringing to the state, to the sector, and the inspiring work that you're leading. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, Sue, thank you for spending time with us this evening. I know that you're busy and there's great demands on your time, and you're so very gracious to take an hour late into the evening in Washington, D.C. tonight to come be part of this community and be part of this really important conversation. You've instructed us, you've informed us, and you've inspired us tonight, and we are deeply grateful.
Well, it's been a huge pleasure, and I look forward to hearing seeing the balloons rising when you hit your campaign goal and go beyond it, which I'm sure you will. Huge respect and huge congratulations, and wishing everybody safe and well.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. And as we think about the campaign, I want to make everyone aware of Giving Day. It's coming up February 25th. We are really excited about our Day of Giving this year. It'll be our third annual Day of Giving here at Lipscomb. And this year we'll have some new things. We'll have a live stream. We'll have the opportunity for people to give to all sorts of different causes across campus. And so we hope you'll mark your calendar for February 25th and the Day of Giving. You'll see a lot more about it through social media and through your email. I also want to point out that we are going to do Imagine this year. As you know, we had to postpone Imagine last year, but we are thrilled that former Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam and Pulitzer Prize winning author and journalist John Meacham will join us for a very special conversation about the soul of America. And I encourage you to come and to be part of this very, very special evening. It will be April 27th. And it should be a wonderful and memorable night. We hope that you'll join us. Thank you all for being part of this special conversation. Thank you for all that you do for Lipscomb University, and we wish you a fantastic night.